So I really hope you had a chance to play around with this and get this quiz working yourself. And in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly I would go about creating this quiz application. Obviously, the first step I want to do is link this existing script tag. So we can just come in here, we could say script, we can set a source to be equal to script.js. And the most important thing is to make sure we defer this so it loads after the entire body of our application is done loading. Now, once we have that done, we can just save this and we can go into our script.js and start working through all of these different sections here. So what I want to do is first do this selecting all of the elements. So we have our form element, we have each one of the answer inputs, for example, this set of radio buttons, this set, and this set down here. We have our individual questions, which contain all of this text inside of here. And then finally, we have the alert that pops up. So let's just come in here, we'll say form is equal to document.getElement by ID, and we're going to get it with the ID of quiz-form. So quiz-form. Then we want to get our answer inputs. So we can just call these answers document.querySelector all, because there's multiple of these. As you can see, there's tons of different inputs. There's 12 in total. And these all have the class of .answer, just like that. So we're selecting all of our answer inputs and all of our form inputs. And for now, we're just going to do this. We're going to come back and do the bonus section in a little bit. So now what we can do is to do number 3. Create a submit event listener for the form, and it does all of this following stuff. So to do that is pretty straightforward. We'll say form.add event listener on submit, and this is going to take in an event and do all of the fun stuff inside of here. So let's just move this all the way down to the bottom. So we have our comments inside of here so we can see exactly what we're working on inside of this form. The first thing is going to be preventing the default behavior. Pretty straightforward. We're just going to call prevent default on our event object, and that means if I save this and I click check, it's not actually going to refresh the page. You'll see it keeps all of my marks, which is exactly what we want. We don't want the page to refresh. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to get all of the answers that are currently selected. So if I select false, I want to get that down here recursion, and then down here element.dataset.dataCount. So to do that, we can loop through our answers, and we can use the filter property, again, this filter method, to get only the certain answers that meet certain criteria. So each one of our answers, what I want to do is I want to check to see if it's checked. And luckily, there's a property we can call, which is called .checked. Every single checkbox and radio box is going to have this. It'll be true if it's selected and false if it's not. And we can just set that equal to checked answers. If I just expand our screen a little bit, so we have more room to code and less room over here, you can see checked answers. And if I just console.log checked answers, we should get those printed out. So if I click here, here, and here, click check and inspect our page, we should hopefully see those being printed out. And of course, we're getting an error. It says answers.filter is not a function of at HTML form element. So again, if you remember correctly, the problem is query selector all is not an actual array. It's returning us this weird HTML collection, and it doesn't have a .filter property. So we need to just say array.from to convert this HTML collection to an array. That'll solve this problem. Now we can select our answers, click check. Oops, not view page source. We want to inspect here. Go over to our console, and you can see we get our 3 inputs. And when I hover them, it gives us the exact input that's currently selected, which is exactly what we want. So now we have our selected answers. Now the next step is this number 3 here, which says loop through the selected answers to see if they're correct or not. And in order to do that, we can check the value of the answer to see if it is the string true. If we look inside of here, you'll see for each one of our inputs, they either have a value of false or true, depending on which one is the correct answer. So if the string true is set for the value, we know that that means that is the correct answer. So what we can do is just say answers dot for each. You could use a normal for loop here if you wanted. I personally prefer for each in these scenarios, so we're going to use a for each loop here. And for each one of these, we want to get our answer. There we go. And inside of here, if I spelled answer correctly, there we go. And inside of here, what I want to do is just say const is correct equals answer.value is equal to that string at true. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the value property, which is just this value here for each one of our inputs. I'm checking if this is equal to the string of true, because this is returning a string of true. And if that's true, if both the string of value is true, then we know that this is the correct answer. Otherwise, it is false. So now I can come in here, just console.log is correct. And let's just select up here a false answer, inspect our page, go to our console and click check, and you'll see that it outputs to us false. And you'll also notice it outputs a bunch of other information. The reason for this is I'm actually looping through all the answers here. I just want to loop through our checked answers because this is what we got the checked answers for. We only want to check the ones that we've actually answered. So now, if I select 0 here, and I go and inspect our page, go over to the console again, whoops, the console, there we go, and I just click check, you can see that this output's false. If I click hi, which is the correct answer, click check, you'll see it gives us true. So now we have a Boolean of false or true depending on if we clicked the right answer or not. So the next step is to actually set up an if statement to say if the answer is correct, then we want to do something. Otherwise, we want to do something else. So if it is correct, we want to mark it as correct. And that's what this step 4 says. For each correct answer, add the class correct to the parent with the class question item and remove the class incorrect. So let's just move this up to here because that's exactly where we're executing this set of logic. So what we need to do is we need to get the parent that has the class question item. And if you remember back, the way to do that is to say our answer dot closest. Sorry, this should not be a const here. Answer dot closest, and dot closest allows us to look at the parents and get any of them that match the selector inside of here. In our case, we want to check for the one that has the class question dash item. This is going to give us the parent, which is the question item. Oops, item, just like that. And this question item, if we look over here, is just this li that wraps our entire question. This wraps all of the text inside of our question, which includes our answer as well as all our question up here, as well as all of our different answers. So this is our parent element. And what we want to do is we want to add the class correct if it's correct and remove the class incorrect. So we can just say question item dot class list dot add, and we want to add the class correct if we got it correct. So let's save that and see what that looks like. We'll just click check, and you'll see that the text turned green since we answered this correctly. If we wanted to check to see if it was false and click check, you'll notice we don't have anything yet because in our else, we need to do question item dot class list dot add, and we need to add incorrect here. So now what happens if we answer correctly, it'll turn green. If we answer incorrectly and click check, it'll turn red. But what happens if we go back to answering correct and we click check? You'll notice it doesn't actually go back to turning green. And the reason for that is we have both the class correct and the class incorrect on our question item here. And incorrect is currently overriding it because it's defined at the bottom of our CSS. If we come up here, you can see incorrect is defined after correct. It's more specific. So what's happening is we have both these classes being applied, so it's not really sure which one to use, and it ends up using incorrect. What we want to do is remove the one that's not actually active. So we can say here, question item dot class list dot remove incorrect. Because if we have the answer correct, we don't want this incorrect class anymore. And that's why here it tells us to remove the class incorrect. And in step 5 here, which is inside this else, it says for each incorrect answer, add the class incorrect and remove the class correct. So we can just say question item dot class list dot remove, and we want to remove that correct class. And if I spell that correctly, and we answer an incorrect answer, it'll turn red. Answer correct, it turns green. And if we go back to incorrect, it turns red. So now we have all of that logic working, which is exactly what we want. The next step is to tackle all of these bonuses. This bonus says make sure unanswered questions show up as incorrect. The easiest way to do this is to add the incorrect class and remove the correct class from all question items before checking the correct answers. So let's just take this, move this up, and it said to do that before we actually do our checked answers. So we're going to move this all the way up to the top here, up here. And what we want to do is we want to take all of our current question items and we want to loop through them and mark all of them as incorrect. And the reason for this is that right now when we click check, it's only marking this as red, even though both 2 and 3 are wrong because we didn't actually answer them. So to mark them as wrong, what we're doing is marking everything as wrong and then only marking the ones correct that are actually checked and show up as correct. So let me show you how to do that. First, we need to get all of our question items, which we can do up here. That's this first bonus. So we can say const question items is equal to document dot query selector all, and this one is dot question item. Then we can take these question items, if I spell it correctly, down here, and we can loop through each one. So we can say for each one of our question items, what we want to do is mark it as incorrect. So we can say question item dot class list dot add incorrect, and question item dot class list dot remove correct. And what this is going to do is automatically mark everything as incorrect. And if I click check, of course we'll get an error. And let's see what this error says. If we just come over to our console, it says question item is not defined. Looks like this should be question items with an S. And now if we click check, you'll notice that everything over here has turned red. And that's because by default, it's marking everything as incorrect. And then we're doing our check for our checked answers here. And we're saying, okay, now which one of our answers are correct? So here I marked a correct answer. If I save this, over here, mark a correct answer, click check, you'll notice it turns green because it first marks everything incorrect and then it checks the ones that we have checked. And in our case, this one is correct. If we mark this one as incorrect, it'll still stay red. So that takes care of our first bonus here, this one. Now the next thing is our final bonus, which is if all the answers are correct, show every element with the show the element with the ID alert and hide it after 1 second. And we need to use set timeout in order to do that. And then we can use the class active to show the alert and remove the class to make it disappear. So let's just do this at the very bottom here. So let's just move this comment up into here so we actually know what we're working with. And down here, what we want to do is say, are all of our answers correct? So to do that, we can use the every function on our array checked answers in order to determine if all of them meet a specific criteria. In our case, we want to check if every single one of our answers has a value of true. And remember that is comparing to the string true. So if this is true, we'll just create a variable called all true. There we go. And we can just say if all true, then we know that all of our answers are marked as correct. So what we can do is actually show that message. And to show that, we need to first select our alert. So let's just come to the top and do that. We can say const alert is equal to document.query selector. And this one is alert and it has an ID. So we'll just do ID alert, just like that. And we could also do get element by ID. It doesn't make much difference. You can do either one. So now that we have that, let's come down here and we want to add the class list here of active to say that we want to show this. So if we correctly answer all of these, let's actually first incorrectly answer one. You'll notice nothing shows up. Now, when I correctly answer, click check, you notice that this message shows up. And right now it's sticking around forever. That's okay. But what we want to do is remove it after a second. So to do that, we can use a function called set timeout. And what this does is it takes two parameters. The first one is a function, and this function is going to run after a certain delay, which is the second parameter. And this is in milliseconds. So if I say in 1000 milliseconds, that means that this function here will run 1000 milliseconds later, or about 1 second later. And inside of here, I just want to remove that class list. So we could say .remove active. So now 1 second later, the function in our set timeout is going to run and remove the class active. So let's just correctly answer all of these again. Click check, it'll show up and then disappear after 1 second. But there's a subtle bug in this code. If I just refresh our page, answer one correct answer and nothing else, you'll notice we get the congratulations message showing up. And that's because what's happening is it's checking here all true. And it's saying, okay, are all of the answers we've checked true? And in our case, all the ones we've checked are true, but it's not caring about these ones that we haven't checked. So how do we check to make sure that all answers are also answered? To do that, we need to check to see if our checked answers array is the same length as our question item array, because that means we have at least one answer for every single one of our different questions. So we can just come down here and say const all answered equals checked answers.length. This is how many answers we have answered. And then here, our question item.length. So we're just saying how many questions have we answered and how many questions total are there. And if these are equal to one another, then that means we've answered every single question. So if they're all true and they are all answered, then we want to run this code. Now, if I click just hi, click check, nothing shows up. If I just do two of them, nothing shows up. Only when I answer all three of them correctly will this show up. But of course, we're getting another error. This is not working. So to check what's wrong, we'll go inspect here, go to our console, and you'll notice no actual error is showing up. So something else must be wrong. Let's just go look at the code we just wrote to see if there's anything noticeable. We'll see here all answered, checked answers.length, that's correct. Question item, this is where our problem is. We don't actually have anything called a question item. Well, technically we do, it's here, but what we want to do is check our array of all of our question items, which is plural. So now if we save this, we should see this doesn't work. This doesn't work, but as soon as we answer the third question, we get our message and then it disappears. And this right here is all the code we need for this quiz. If we just kind of go up to take a look at what we all wrote, first thing we did is select all of our different elements we're going to be using. We set up an event listener on our form for when we submit it, prevented it from doing that refresh, and then we marked all of our questions as incorrect by default. We essentially said, by default, we assume you got it wrong, so if you didn't answer it, it's going to be marked as wrong. Then we got all of the answers we currently answered, so all of the ones that we checked, and we determined, hey, is this the correct answer? If so, you know what, mark it as correct. Otherwise, mark it as incorrect because you didn't answer it correctly. Then what we did is we came all the way down here and we said, if you answer all the questions and you answer them all true, then we're going to show you a nice little message for 1 second before it disappears. And that's all there is to this simple quiz application. In the next video, I'm going to be giving you another exercise, and this one is much more practical, and it's built around form validation. So I can't wait to see you in that next video.